Thanks to Haya for sponsoring today's video. Today I want to share with you some really approachable ways to do healthy food prep. So it's kind of like ingredient prep or a little bit of meal prep, but I love doing stuff like this so that I can have plenty of nourishing, healthy things ready to go in the fridge so I can easily put together a meal because I already have some of the basics taken care of. I think ease is something you have to really try to figure out because whenever you're trying to create a healthier lifestyle or have a healthier diet, you have to kind of think about your real self and just how full your days are. So whether you have a job, kids, or family, we all have so much going on and you have to know how to run your kitchen. That way you can take care of your body and be a good steward of it. And it does not have to take a bunch of time or energy. Even just a little bit of prep each week can make a huge difference in your life. And this time of year especially, so many of us start detoxes and different kinds of diets and resets. But one of the most powerful ways to really change your health is simply to reset your habits. So much of our energy comes from food. So we have to take the time to do these mini meal preps and things like this. That way we can eat those healthy, nourishing things and truly feel amazing in our bodies and have good energy levels. So much of that just comes straight from the food that you eat. So you have control over that and you can make the change and reset those habits simply by doing little things like this in the kitchen each week. We've got to learn to use these real foods to fuel our life. So I'm going to walk you through what I'm prepping, why I'm prepping it. If I have recipes for you, I'll leave them down below in the description box, or you can just go to healthyelizabeth.com. They'll be there. So let's get started. I'm going to take you through my really easy weekly food prep and ingredient prep, meal prep routine this week. So this is really how I do it and really how I get prepared for the week ahead. And it sets me up for so much success, let me just tell you. So I'm starting out by washing some celery and carrots. I like to give them a nice scrub down so they're really, really clean because I'm going to use them to make a broth. And this is something I do almost every single week because I not only use broth for soups, I use it for cooking my grains like brown rice and quinoa, and I can always really quickly just take a jar of my broth and use it to make a soup, especially for lunch. I do this a lot of times because I can take that and just put a little bit of meat in there or just make a vegetable soup out of it and just boil some veggies off really quickly in that broth because they are not actually going to lose their nutrients when you boil vegetables in your soup because you're consuming that broth too. So don't be afraid to just make a really quick and easy vegetable soup. But that is one of my favorite things to prep each week. It's also really economical to make your own broth, so I do prefer to make it when I can. And when you're using meat and bones especially, there's so much collagen in there. So this is not only great for your gut lining and having a good, healthy gut microbiome, but it's amazing for your hair, for your skin, especially during the cold months when your skin starts to get really dry. Consuming as much broth as you can is so good for you. Also, if you're like a nursing mother or you just had a baby or you're pregnant, all of these things are so important to get into your diet, but really just for anybody because there are so many health benefits in here. This is something a lot of different cultures that are the healthiest across the world, almost all of them consume some sort of broth or bone broth very, very frequently, if not daily or with every meal. So today I'm making one of my favorites. It's basically the same as my vegetable broth, but I end up adding chicken into it. And I do it in a kind of interesting way here, but I take some chicken drumsticks or chicken wings. I like to make sure I'm using those cuts of meat that have a little bit more bones and cartilage in them because there's going to be more health benefits to that. So I'm just adding in a package of pasture-raised chicken drumsticks. I like using this because there's not a ton of meat on them, so I have a little bit of meat to pull off, but then I still have plenty of bones in there that's going to give us really good nutrients. I always get so many questions about what I feed my kids and what I give them as supplements, and I give them their Haya vitamins, who is the sponsor of today's video, so thank you Haya for partnering with me. But they take the Haya Daily Kids Vitamin. I love these because they're just a cleaner version. They're not a gummy vitamin, which is basically just candy in disguise. There's no sugar in these, and I love that. So there's no unhealthy chemicals, there's no gummy additives, and there's no added sugar. It supports their brain health, their digestion. You can give it to all your little ones, ages 2 and up, and it's sent right to your door every month. You can put it on a subscription. I love that it's reusable. That's always super nice. And then I'm so excited about their newest product, which is a chocolate daily green beans powder for your kids. It's amazing. You can just mix it into milk or non-dairy milk and shake it up like chocolate milk. There's over 55 whole food ingredients in this powder, and so my kids will have all of that every day, and it just helps bridge that gap. So if you're ready to end the battle of trying to get your kids to eat their greens or take their vitamins, you can go to hiyahealth.com/healthy Elizabeth, and they're gonna give you guys 50% off your first order. So you can't get this on their regular website. You have to use my link to get the deal. That's hiyahealth.com/healthy Elizabeth, and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Thanks so much to Hiya for sponsoring today's video. You also want to make sure that you're using really good salt. So I like a nice French gray sea salt. I love any kind of sea salt for the most part, but especially the ones that have water content to them. They're really great for you. I'm also adding in a Parmesan rind because this is something that can easily be wasted in the fridge, but I love putting them in the freezer, and then if you put them in your broth, it sets you up for a delicious soup already. So you can use that Parmesan rind in multiple batches depending on how much broth you make. Another thing I like to add is apple cider vinegar to my bone broth because that helps to extract more nutrients from those bones. The vinegar and the acidity of it helps to break down the bones. That way they can release minerals like calcium, magnesium, potassium. So you definitely want to add just a little splash of that in there. And I always make my broth in the Instant Pot because I can pressure cook it and have that broth done in just a couple of hours versus having to leave it simmering on the stove or something all day long. So it's a really easy way to get it in the fridge and ready to go as quickly as possible, which is perfect for meal prep. Anytime I'm doing a meal prep or ingredient prep, I always start with the things that take the longest. So that's why it always starts out with broth. There's definitely other things that I'm going to make that I haven't made before, but I always start out with my simple staples, which is broth. And then I love making a soup. That way I can pull it out really quickly at lunchtime, especially because I homeschool my kids. And so lunchtime can be really busy because we're still trying to get school done. And I want to make sure that I'm getting something healthy in me. And this time of year, I don't love things like salads quite as much because I'm usually cold. So I love a warm soup and I can pack it full of all the good stuff. So today I'm making a split pea soup, which it's similar to lentils if you haven't had split peas before, and the flavor of this is absolutely incredible. It's one of my new favorite soups, and I love getting all those split peas in there because not only are they green, but they're packed full of protein, and it is just so good. So I have my onion sauteing on the stove. I just diced that onion and sauteed it in a little bit of avocado oil, and now I'm just taking a couple slices of a smoky bacon, and I'm cutting that up with my scissors and putting that into the pot with some diced celery and carrots. So I'm taking about 2 cups of my split peas, and I just like to rinse those. You could also soak them in water though and let them kind of sprout, but I just rinse them really quickly. Then I'll add that into the pot with that bacon that's rendered its fat and gotten nice and like chewy and done. And then all of those carrots and onions and celery have absorbed that bacon fat that's rendered out and just has the most amazing depth of flavor. So just adding the piece or two of bacon in there gives this whole soup amazing flavor. So I just add all the split peas, and then I'm adding a mixture of yellow potatoes and sweet potatoes. You could do all yellow or all sweet. This is totally personal preference, but for some reason I just love the combination of the two. I think because the yellow potatoes give it really good texture, but then the sweet potatoes give it a little bit of sweetness. So I'm adding all of those in, and then I'm adding a little sprig of thyme. You could omit that if you just want to leave it plain, but I love a little bit of fresh thyme. You could also use dry. And then I'm going to put in plenty of broth and salt. Something I'm really striving to do right now is to increase my prebiotic intake, and especially all the fiber of raw vegetables. It is just incredible for your gut and for your microbiome. And it's important to increase the variety of microbes that are in your gut. And you do that by eating a lot of different kinds of fruits and vegetables. You want to really diversify that if you can, because not only is it amazing for your gut, but obviously you're getting all of those health benefits too, all the different minerals and all the different vitamins that come in all the different veggies and fruits. It truly is so important. And it really is so simple. So something I have a ton of right now since it's winter are carrots. And I love buying the full size regular organic carrots. And I'll just peel those and then I'm cutting them into little sticks. And what I like to do is I put them in a glass jar and then I'll cover them with fresh filtered water. And they keep in the fridge so well. It's like if you go to a restaurant that serves wings and they give you those little carrot sticks. But these are so much better because they're in season, they're organic, and they're nice and sweet. But then when you cover them with water, it almost helps to hydrate them more. So they're just like the best carrots you've ever tasted. So I do this and my kids love it because it's so easy access, but they're so much fresher than little baby carrots. So I know this seems like such a simple thing, but even just cutting up your own vegetables and prepping them and keeping them in a glass jar in the fridge where you can see them, it is so much easier to go and reach for those things or just put a few on the side of your lunch or dinner and get all of those fibers and prebiotics into your diet. Another thing that I love doing is taking a package of spinach if I haven't had any growing in the garden, which right now everything is dead because it is absolutely freezing. So nothing is growing in the garden right now, but I love taking a container of organic baby spinach and I'll put that in a freezer bag. This is a silicone zip top freezer bag and I will freeze this right after I buy it. That way it stays fresh for smoothies. Now, a little trick I've been doing with my broth lately is I'm taking it and I'm cooking it with the meat first. So it has all that delicious meat flavor in the broth. But then I take the meat off of the bone and I'll use that meat for a different dish or just to have meal prepped in the fridge. And then I'll take the bones and put them back in the broth and pressure cook it one more time. So I feel like I'm getting the most out of the drumsticks this way, or any kind of meat. You can do the same exact thing. And if it's something like chicken wings, you can just remove that meat. There's not going to be a lot there. It's mostly meat and skin, but then you can put it right back in and pressure cook it with the bones to make kind of a richer bone broth. Once my soup was done cooking, I love taking just a cup or two and putting that either in the blender or in the food processor and getting it really smooth. I add that into the soup again and just stir it all together, and it makes it thicker and richer feeling. It just changes the consistency, so it becomes so much more like comforting and hearty. And then to store it, I love using glass jars, especially because I like to go ahead and jar it up while it's still hot, so I don't have to worry about that plastic from Tupperware or things like that leaching into my soup. You always want to store things in glass or ceramic or something that's really non-toxic. I try to avoid plastic as much as I can because you don't want that to come in contact with your food. I do use plastic in lids like this because it's not touching my food, so I'm not worried about it. But in general, anything that's going to be touching hot soup or something like that, you want to make sure that none of those microplastics are going to leak in there and ruin your health benefits. Now I'm putting together one of my all-time favorite chicken marinades, or you can use steak or anything in this. It's just a really easy all-purpose marinade. So all I do is I take about 1/4 cup of avocado oil, and you can scale this whole recipe up. So depending on how much you're making, but this is how much I'm using for just one whole chicken that's not huge. So I'm using 1/4 cup of avocado oil, 1/4 cup of coconut aminos, or you could use soy sauce or liquid aminos. And then I do 2 tablespoons of vinegar. You can kind of switch up the kind you use, and then 2 tablespoons of coconut sugar and 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. And then I mix that all together, and then you can throw in salt, pepper, garlic powder, any of that. I'm actually just using about 1/2 tablespoon of this all-purpose seasoning, so you could also do that. And you don't want to add a bunch of extra salt to this. There's tons of flavor in there, so you don't need to go crazy with the salt. But this is the best marinade because it has oil, so nothing's going to stick when you're cooking it. It has the vinegar to kind of break everything cooking down and make sure it's nice and tender. And then all the flavor from coconut aminos and the sweetness from the coconut sugar. There's so much going on here, and it makes any cup of meat or even fish taste really good. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a whole pasture raised chicken. I've been ordering a box from Pasture Bird, and I just build my own subscription box. So every month I get a few whole chickens in the mail, and it's so convenient. These are the best quality. They're like regenerative and everything. So I really have been loving these lately. I'm looking for a better source to get meat because my farmers stopped doing their beef. So I'm looking for a new place to find beef. It's really hard to find good quality beef. So I'm sticking with chicken right now, and I'm just going to put this whole chicken that I spatchcocked. So I just kind of cut it in half, and I'm just doing this because it makes it cook quicker. So if I'm busy tomorrow and need a really quick dinner, then I can just have this marinated chicken ready to go, and it's going to cook really quickly in the Breville oven. So I'm going to just marinate this in a big Ziploc baggie. You could use silicone baggies, of course, but since it's chicken and there's germs on it, I do like to use a disposable bag. And then I always put it in a glass bowl to put it in the fridge. That way, if there's any holes in the bag, I can just leave it in the bowl and not have to worry about those germs spilling out into my fridge. And then that is something I can make in the next couple of days, and it is going to taste delicious because it's been marinating for so long. I always get asked about the vegetables that are strained out of the broth and what we can do with them to repurpose them. And yes, they still have some fiber in them, but for the most part, all of their nutrients are in the broth. So there's not a lot you really want to do with them. You could put them into something like a fritter just for some extra fiber, but other than that, all those nutrients are in the broth. And this is why it's really important to use scraps from your fridge. Use stuff that's about to go out. Don't use your brand new fresh celery or carrots for the week. Make sure that you're using things that are already in your fridge, or that you save in a freezer bag even. That way you're not wasting, but it's actually helping to prevent waste and what would spoil in your fridge. So my favorite thing to do with them is either give them to my chickens or just put them into my garden compost. I love storing my broth in these little silicone cubes. That way I can pop them out into a freezer bag, and then I have frozen broth. And the reason I put them on a baking sheet is just so that when I'm transporting them into the freezer, they don't spill everywhere. So it just keeps it clean. And then once I'm done, you can just pop them out, and it is so easy. I usually always have a rotation going. So these are from last week's broth, but I'm just popping them out now and then refilling that. And then I also like to leave some of my broth in the fridge because I know I'll use it in soup or something probably in the next couple days, so I don't even need to worry about storing it. So I have that in a glass jar in the fridge.